Five-star recruit, five-star quarterback, the number 2, or I guess, or number 1, whichever service you look at, Joe. Dylan Raiola, or Raiola, however you say his last name. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Was at Buford this past year, transferred to Georgia, but made a big announcement today. Also, a big announcement came from Georgia today that Carson Beck was returning too. Joe, this was kind of the biggest secret that everybody knew, that he was going to flip. I guess, what's your thoughts on Raiola flipping to Nebraska?
Yeah, we already kind of covered what the magnitude of this would be for the college football landscape. I think just plain and simply, this is extremely big for Nebraska, and that's not a hot take. No one's going to be sitting here like, wow, how could you say something like that? The way that this creates momentum for the program, if he sticks around, if he stays for the entirety of his college career, I think that, one, there's a capability to flip some of the offensive weapons, some of the players in this class to come join him, kind of like what we saw. Arch Manning was kind of a similar caliber of a name that was able to attract other stars in the class to come join him. And I think that Raiola has that type of gravitational pull. He is that type of a recruit. He's that type of a prospect. So pay attention. Let's see who decides to come there amongst the 2024 recruiting class. Just the big thing here, though, if he plays up to his potential, he's got a huge arm. He throws on the run really well. He can stretch the field really easily. If they are able to build around him effectively by the time he takes his first start, which I don't think should be his freshman year, they shouldn't rush him onto the field like we saw happen with Dante Moore. If by 2 years from now he gets on the field and they got some good pieces around him, Nebraska can be a dangerous team in the Big Ten. I don't think that they'll ever be good enough to win it just yet, but they can still be in that top 4 discussion amongst those top teams.
When you change programs, Joe, and this happens everywhere, whether it was Saban when he went back to Alabama and they started recruiting, like, remember when he went to Alabama, the first kid that he got committed was Julio Jones. You got to get these big-time 5-star dudes to flip and recruit around them. I think they can do that. I 1,000% believe that they can recruit some good pieces around him to be better than what they have been. So I'm not expecting that kid to go in there and change everything and them get to a playoff or national title.
No.
But did you watch what they had at quarterback this year?
Guys that probably wouldn't start on most other Power 5 rosters.
Probably not. It's not even an upgrade. It's a massive upgrade. Okay? I get what you're saying, that they got to put pieces around him. I think that they will put pieces around him. I don't think that there's a foregone conclusion that Matt Rule is not going to be able to recruit at a better level. They're already recruiting at a better level. Recruiting is the lifeblood that fuels the dreams of champions. Shout out to former Kentucky wide receiver Dickie Lyons, who that's his saying. But it's true. Look, it's great for Nebraska. At worst, even if the kid doesn't even play well, the perception of other dudes following in that footprint becomes a bigger deal now. And look, college football is better when Nebraska is better. Joe, we saw they continuously sell out their stadium every single home game. They have a very passionate fan base. I want Nebraska to be great again, right? Like I want, and I probably shouldn't have said it that way because people are going to think it's political. I didn't mean it that way. But I want them to get back to winning 8, 9, 10 games a year. That makes college football better. Does this kid have enough ability to do that? He's not going to run all over you. He's got an explosive arm. Explosive arm. He might have one of the best arms that I've seen in maybe the last 3 or 4 recruiting cycles. Like, he's that good. He's going to struggle out of the gate. And this is a building process, okay? Great for Nebraska, but I want to say this too now, all right? This does not change my perception whatsoever for Georgia. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago or last week. Changes nothing for me when it comes to what I think about Georgia. And look, they got massive news today with Carson Beck coming back, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But I like it for Nebraska. I like it for the kid. I think he's got roots there. He's got ties there. It feels right. It's not like, Joe, he has no ties to Nebraska. They threw him a massive
right. He was getting paid.
deal.
Yeah, right.
You know, like this. he's got ties there. And you know what? The kid is a legacy. I guarantee you that the kid went to games with his dad. Okay, grew up maybe wanting to be there.
I think he was still going to games I forget what it was exactly, so I'm not going to make a false anecdote here, but I believe he was still like this season after he was committed to Georgia, he was still attending games.
Right. I mean,
so he's still
what are we talking about here? Like you thought the kid wasn't going to you thought that this wasn't ever a possibility? Because it 1000% now is the realistic thing that happened.
One thing I'll say with this as well, I feel like it was really hard to attract recruits to come to Nebraska. And let's be honest with ourselves. I'm not trying to be negative to Nebraska fans, but for kids from Texas or from Florida or from California, it's not exactly a sexy location to want to come there. Midwestern states, yes, a lot of those kids, you can recruit them. But in order to get to that next level, you have to be able to recruit different regions of the country where there are hotbeds in recruiting. And the Midwest generally does not produce a lot of big name recruits. Scott Frost failed horribly at being able to bring guys in there. The Nebraska recruiting class of 2024 is fine. But again, as I said a second ago, this makes waves for this cycle and for the next few cycles to bring in better recruits, because there is going to be so much attention on Nebraska football the minute that he takes his first snap. Even if he takes only a couple of snaps in his freshman season, they're going to get talked about way, 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 way more than we're used to even discussing them.
Well, oh, my bad.
I was going to say that level of name recognition helps with kids that are up and coming and that are looking for where they want to play. I think that's going to pay massive, massive dividends for them.
Well, look, they do have some decent pieces that he could work with instantly. Now, they're the 23 overall class and right now. And look, there's no telling what they're going to be able to do on National Signing Day. Can they flip some kids now that the Raiola news has come out? Can they get themselves into the teens? Can they get themselves into the top 15? That remains to be seen. But look, Carter Nielsen, a 6'4" tight end from the state of Nebraska, he's committed. But, Joe, I go and look. They got multiple offensive linemen that can play. Like, they have built somewhat decently. But do they have to get better? Do they have the dudes on the outside that could beat a Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington? No, they don't. But we're also not asking him in year one. This is a 3-4 year, maybe even 5-year process that's going to have to take place. If they start getting kids to flip on signing day, they go into the portal and get some receivers, you start feeling better. Now, I will say this, Joe, you remember we talked about this during the season. The only real thing we talked about with Nebraska, they played tough for Matt Rule. If they had any offensive pulse whatsoever, they're beating Iowa. Remember, we're all sitting there watching the Iowa game. They're going to beat Iowa, okay? There are games that they completely left on the table that they could have won. Defensively they were not an issue. Joe, they were actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
If a kid like this, now I do have my, I'm going to say this. I told you in pre-production. I told you last week. I still have my skepticisms on him, meaning Raiola. I still think his processing, I think, is a little questionable. But this isn't Matt Rule's first rodeo, all right? You talked about, now I don't know if Matt Rule was the head coach. This isn't the first time he's got a big-name quarterback to go to his school. Wasn't he the head coach when Stidham committed to Baylor?
Let me check.
I mean, like, he's been able to convince some high-profile quarterbacks in high school recruiting to go to his school.
Yeah, he was there 2017 to 2019. Jared Stidham was at Baylor. It was 2015. So no, that wasn't him.
Okay,
that wasn't him. But
I thought that he might have been the head coach. I was one.
This is probably without a doubt the best, most talented. I know the timeline's kind of hard to keep up with because it's all the shit that went down with Baylor. This is without a doubt the most talented quarterback that he's had.
No,
I think that one thing that's like a little bit of where I'm more concerned is not with Raiola's talent that you're talking about, because I think that the kid look, it's a very cliche to compare players to Patrick Mahomes, but he has that improviser, big arm skill set that gets that name brought up. Where I'm a little more concerned, and I think he'll be fine and be able to play with maybe a limited roster because he can create for himself. But like Scott Satterfield, is he really that good of an offensive coordinator that we're going to be optimistic for him to scheme some stuff up for him? I feel like he's been uneventful as an offensive coordinator in his time calling plays.
Well, Joe, here's the truth behind that, though. Name an elite offense in the Big Ten this year.
Sorry, Marcus Satterfield.
I mean, you got Oregon coming in. You got Washington coming in. There are so many games that they left on the table. They can be an 8-win team next year. They can be an 8-9-win team in 2 years.
I think that's more realistic. In 2 years, when he starts,
Right.
8 to 9 wins is realistic. I still think that as Washington and Oregon and UCLA and USC enter the conference, and I don't think that they play all those teams off the top of my head, it is going to be even harder for them to be bowl eligible in 2024. But that's not the year that you're looking to take that next step. The year that you're taking the next step is 2025, his first full year as a starter. You've hopefully had 2 recruiting cycles of good offensive linemen, good receivers, and you have a good defensive coordinator that you can legitimately do some damage. But man, it is going to be hard to go up against Michigan State as they're developing. Wisconsin, they're going to be 3 years in on Luke Fickell. They really, really need to get caught up because there is going to be a lot of competition now in the Big Ten with all of these teams.
Maybe. You're not wrong. But again, Joe, like they can beat these Iowa teams. He instantly comes in, he can beat them.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, they're going to kick the crap out of Minnesota and Iowa, and maybe not kick the crap out of Iowa,
but again, let's just say he comes in as a freshman and he's able to generate any form of offense and beats those teams, Joe. You're talking about a bowl, not even a bowl team. You're talking about a fringe 8-win football team right now because of him flipping. Because and I know that he's good enough right now. Yeah, he might have turnovers. He might throw picks. Joe, he's not going to – the kid's good enough where he can generate you a touchdown or two. For them to – like, I'm not asking the kid to come in here and be Washington or LSU's offense from this past year. I'm asking him to score 14 points, and they're going to win the football game.
So would you start him right off the bat?
I don't know that. I don't know that. Let's see how
I think even if he looks somewhat ready, I'm not rushing him out there. Because like, how often do we see redshirt freshmen play capably well? Like the closest examples that we have.
You mean like Lincoln did to Caleb Williams? I mean, this is
Caleb Williams is a massive exception, though.
Remember Spencer Rattler poo-pooed the bed.
But he also didn't do that until halfway through the season, though.
Sure, but what I'm saying is let's not act as if that the kid can't come in and generate offense, because the kid can come in there right now and generate offense.
I don't know if I want to just shove him out there to generate offense. And I would hope that's not the notion.
There's nobody on the roster better than him at quarterback.
But sometimes, okay, well, here's a really good example. This past year, we saw them just shove Dante Moore out there because they didn't really have anybody better. And then they kept rotating guys because he got banged up a little bit. He threw a bunch of turnovers, and the situation soured so badly, we don't know what the full story was. But one could argue that because of the way that he played in that offense, that maybe he felt a little bit sour about the situation. So I don't know if I'm Dylan Raiola and if I'm that coaching staff, if I want to rush him out there. Yes, he's probably the best, most talented quarterback on the roster and most ready to play guy on the roster the minute that he steps in the door. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to put him out there just to burn him. This isn't the NFL, in my opinion. This isn't the NFL where
to do that. All I'm saying is
I'm not so much disagreeing with you. I'm just postulating here. I'm just saying that, like,
you and those big dictionary words.
Shut up. My point is that I'm not going to put him out there like an NFL rookie quarterback and force him out there so he can learn on the job. The jump from high school to college is difficult as a true freshman trying to play specifically at the quarterback position. Other positions are different. Quarterback's too hard for me. I'm not throwing him out there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.